This is the Slots and Sockets Podcast, episode number 76. I am one of your hosts, IRD Moose, and my partner in crime,
Turbo Penguin, Basement Penguin tonight.
Good evening.
That might be the normal penguin you get for a while.
It may be the standard future penguin, the standard
It might
issue,
be.
if you will. Welcome to the number one tech podcast, as voted by my mom. She was the only surveyed applicant. So, thanks, Mom. And hi, Mom. We've been doing some digging a little bit. And on this late edition, we've got some interesting stories today. First one seems to be about Nvidia. What's going on there, Turbo?
So, we know Nvidia has been kind of hemming and hawing about a super series. And they have not done a very good job at really, they haven't confirmed it, but at the same time, they're not
They're not fighting any of the rumors.
Yeah, they're not. And so we have like a lot of information. And the thing is that like when it comes to like leaks, and these are leaks, like they're not guaranteed, but the problem is I think that there's probably some space, because right now what we're starting to see in the marketplace is more or less like GPU stagnation.
Mm-hmm.
People who have bought a card because they wanted one have bought one, even if it's an inflated price. And now when you go to Micro Center, all of those cards are at MSRP. You can walk into a Micro Center or go on to Newegg or Amazon and have your pick of multiple cards, regardless of your Nvidia or AMD. And so I think what we're seeing here is probably the mass majority of graphics cards, of Blackwell cards that have been sold, have already been sold.
Right.
And the way to kind of generate, some more, this is not new, but Nvidia has done super series in the past. The weird thing that we have with this super series is that it largely is going to be like a half. It's not going to be as strong as the prior cards. So, for instance, when we looked back at the 4080 and then we looked at the 4080 Super, the 4080 Super was a good 7 to 10% quicker because it actually had more cores. Okay. It actually was like, from a CUDA core count, and was a better piece. It was faster. And that translated into faster, performance, whether that was AI performance, gaming performance, basically across the board. It's somewhere between 7 and 10% faster. Okay.
Right. And that's why we usually say that you really should only be buying the super versions of cards. Because they are faster.
Agreed. I'm not sure I'm going to revert and change my opinion on Nvidia cards, because I do believe there's some benefits of what we're seeing. But like with the odd exception, the 5080 Super is going to have the same core count as the 5080. The 5070 Ti Super has the same core count as the 5070 Ti.
Which is pretty unusual. You typically see a bump in core count for Super.
Yes, usually you do. That's one of the reasons where it's like, yeah, okay. And with like the 4080 Super was like, it was cheaper than the 4080, and I got more cores and it was faster. So like there were some pretty good benefits. The only one that's in this price point of the supers that is getting a CUDA core bump, okay, is the 5070 Super. Now, this is the card that I think probably makes the most sense, of probably the best upgrade in the Super series. But I also think that's probably the only reason we're saying that is because the 5070 was sort of a dud, because, at 12 gigabytes of GDDR7, that was the limitation that people were going to run into. It might not be this year, it might not be in 15 months, but it was like, for the price point, the 12 gigabytes was like, ew. And so it pushed people up into buying the 5070 Ti. The 5070 Super looks like it's going to have 18 gigs, which I'm happier with. That does get a very, very modest CUDA core upgrade, 256. Okay.
That's assuming you don't have the issue they had previously where you were missing CUDA cores anyway.
That's true. That's assuming you're not missing ROPS, which is going to be missing CUDA cores. But let's be honest, that's 4%. It's really not going to be. I would make the argument that the RAM is probably the biggest upgrade for the 5070 Super,
for sure,
more so than the 4% of CUDA cores. Will it translate to faster performance? Yes. Do I think you'll see it in benchmarks? Probably. Is it going to have meaningful impact? As I said, I think it's probably the best of the group. The 5070 Ti Super and the 80 Super, those cards are legitimately the same GPU, same core count. Now, technically speaking, from what we're seeing, they do have different SKUs, but that's pretty normal even for the Super Series, just to delineate there's a difference. But the core count's going to be the same. The frequency is probably the only place you might see a bump. I think the in all honesty, because Nvidia really has these cards limited by overclocking. They're doing that on purpose, by the way. So the biggest bump here from a performance perspective is probably the available power.
Yep.
So the 80 was listed at 360. The 80 Super probably 415, 425. I don't know. If they feel threatened, I could see them going up to a 450. I don't see them going higher than 450.
Yeah.
That's, you're going to push the envelope unless you feel like there's some. Now we know that AMD and Radeon, they've toyed with the idea. I don't of like a 9080. I don't think they're gonna do it. I think the problem with that card is financially it doesn't make good sense for them. It's not going to make them money.
Well, they're already so far into the life cycle that it doesn't make sense to release a whole new card with a new.
Well, that's it. Like, I think at the beginning it would have made sense. Like, had you had a 9080, that would have made sense. The other half is it's my understanding they've had really good yields coming out from TSMC on the 9070s and 60s, that a lot of the 9060s are basically qualifying as 9070 XTs, and they're just zapping them so that they get the right performance.
Fusing them down,
they're fusing them down.
Yeah, and one of the things too that back on the Nvidia side that we sometimes see with the supers is not just an increase in core count, but also newer processes, because they're not necessarily completely overhauling the GPU, but they're taking advantage of the ability to make tweaks to the silicon to make it more efficient in areas where it could use that, and potentially better on power, even if we're not getting a core increase. So if they, like you were saying, if they bump the power envelope for a 5080 and find some other areas on the die where they can get more power and more thermal budget for actual graphics tasks, it might be a significant improvement in performance because let's be completely honest, comparing the 5080 to 4080, the 5080 is a dog because you're paying more for roughly the same performance. Like, unless you're doing some crazy overclocks and you're playing with unlocked and modded BIOSes, you're basically getting 4080 performance for $1,000 more.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the key piece on a Super Series is going to be price.
Yeah,
The fact, I mean, I think the problem is that because so many of these 5080s were above MSRP, that I think a lot of gamers are looking at this, saying, okay, well, MSRP means nothing, and I think
yeah.
there's probably a good reasoning
Well, and
behind
even the
that.
MSRP was above MSRP because those cards should really be a stock 5080 should be 799.
Yeah. I
So,
will
yeah.
say, I mean, the honest truth is just looking at my local micro center, you can now get multiple cards at MSRP of $9.99.
Good.
So I mean, I've
Good.
got one MSI, I've got 11 Zotacs, I've got 25 plus of the PNYs, and 5 of the gigabytes. And then, if you go up and wanted to have an overclocked version, you can spend the 100, 200, $300 here or there
Yeah.
to get it.
So, new rule, if you want to buy an Nvidia card at MSRP, wait
Just
6
wait.
months.
I mean, that's pretty much what it is. I mean, now with that being said, I would make the argument that AMD is in the same absolute boat
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I mean it has nothing to do with them because AMD was doing the same thing. It's my understanding on the AMD side, you can easily get a 9070 XT at MSRP. I think a lot of these guys are really pushing the 70s to higher prices. And so
Mhm.
I'm interested to see actually, because there's 12 of them, you can get one at 699.
Okay.
Um, is that was it 699? No, it's 599. So they don't have any cards at MSRP.
Hmm.
And everything else is more expensive.
Yeah. Which they'll
So
probably come down eventually, but, the difference between the 2 product lines was, uh, AMD actually had supply. There was just so much demand that they couldn't keep up with it. Nvidia had demand, but no supply. Both cases for a business really suck, but
yeah,
I'd rather be in the position of having people that want my stuff more than not being able to and not being able to keep up with demand than, not having the silicon to sell to people. Because, I mean, hey, MSI, remember when you used to make AMD cards?
it's
Yeah,
so
somebody missed the
interesting.
boat.
Yeah, it's interesting with that one because um I don't know. It will be interesting to see if MSI does something because I think behind the scenes there must have been a business reason for them to make that decision.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, and
I'm
I
not
mean,
100% sure.
in business, every decision is going to be a roll of the dice. And speaking of rolls of the dice, Intel's
Are
got some fun stuff going on with Nova Lake.
you going to roll the dice with Intel Nova Lake Moose?
I will not, but well, actually, technically, I already have, and so have you, and pretty much every other taxpayer in the United States, because
Oh
the
gosh.
federal government does own 10% of Intel now.
Yeah.
But the CEO recently, or rather their CFO recently, made some interesting admissions about Arrow Lake
So they
and a
finally,
cool statement
yeah,
about Nova Lake.
yeah. So basically, and this is at the Deutsche Bank Technology Conference that a week and a half ago, basically said that yeah, Arrow Lake wasn't good. So, in a very short, piece. And they're hoping the hope is that Nova Lake is better. The problem that I have with this is it's my understanding that Nova Lake is going to be in a totally different socket again. And so I think that's probably required because of, but man, anyone who bought Arrow Lake got to
Mm,
be not super happy because you have no upgrade path and it's going to be a low selling, um, piece on that. So it's like, but now with that being said, I will say, I was working with my brother to put together a budget build for some video editing,
mhm,
and he had a free Intel um, Arrow Lake motherboard that he was donating for this cause.
okay.
And you can get the 265 and 285K for fairly inexpensive. Surprise, surprise, they're not selling well.
Right. Well,
um,
I mean, number one, they underperformed compared to the previous gen, to the self-immolating 14th gen. And number two, people just didn't trust them because of the self-immolating 14th gen. So not only are you losing performance on the previous gen, but you still have the stigma of the previous gen's colossal failures. So why would you buy that part unless you're either forced to for, industrial purposes, or like in the case of your brother, you win a motherboard somewhere or
I
somebody just
mean,
gives you one.
I
Like,
mean, here's the problem that I have here is that you know I'm sure Intel is really hoping that Nova Lake S and Nova Lake is really good,
mhm,
but I'm not 100% sold on this because it's almost like AMD and Intel have flopped spots
yeah. Well, and
because
same with Nvidia too, because Nvidia is having driver issues.
yeah, but like if you look at AMD, Zen 6
Yep.
is rumored to be very high 6 if not 7 gigahertz core clocks.
Yeah.
So really really high core clocks, okay?
Well, and knowing
And
AMD's leakers, that 7 gigahertz might actually be conservative. It might be base clock at 7
yeah,
gig, and we might get boost clocks at like 7.5 or something. Who
yeah,
knows?
it might be really quick.
Yeah.
So for gamers, the other half of this is that I mean AMD is not playing games.
No.
You get you're going to get 8 just full on cores.
Yep.
They don't call them P cores or E cores or whatever type of core you have.
The Econobox cores. Yeah.
Yeah, Econobox crap cores. You don't get
Right.
Pentium cores and
Right.
then performance cores. Like you're gonna just get those cores, and the performance you're gonna get out of it. But the leaks that we're seeing from Nova Lake are high core counts but lower clock speeds, and it's like for games, I just don't see how that's going to be super competitive in the gaming piece
Yeah.
when you have to sit there and say 52 cores or 48 cores or 26 cores. It's like, guys, I mean, yeah, okay, yeah, it has a big number of cores,
Mm-hmm.
but if they're kind of crappy economy cores that can't do a lot of stuff very quickly, or maybe it's really good for for like production work and where you're
Productivity
really
tests, things. Yeah.
productivity stuff like workplace stuff. But I mean, a 52 core 4.8 gigahertz processor is just not going to get you really high frame rates
Yeah.
in games.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
regardless, I mean, unless somehow you've got like a 30% IPC where you're wildly efficient somewhere,
Yeah.
I just don't see that being realistic, though.
Well,
And
one of the
so,
things I think that's going to help them is, they're moving to this architecture where they're dumping hyperthreading. and they're just piling on more of their P cores. But kind of to that train of thought, eh, circling back to kind of what the CFO said, he and I'm paraphrasing here. As you know, we kind of fumbled the ball on the desktop side, particularly the high performance desktop side. But Nova Lake, which is the next product, is a more complete set of SKUs. And we are kind of seeing that. But
Well,
with
hold
with
up.
the implementation of the P cores as they are, I think that could go a long way because you're not splitting a physical core into two subcores.
So go interesting. He says a more complete set of SKUs.
Hmm. Which could imply HEDT as well. And that's one of the rumors I've also heard, is that we're going to eventually get an HEDT part, which I think is probably spurred on by AMD announcing Threadripper.
I mean, so this is interesting. So the quote specifically is a a more complete SKU
Set of
set
SKUs.
set of
Yes.
SKUs. So right now there's only 4 SKUs on Arrow Lake. 245, 265, 265 KF,
On the desktop side, yeah.
and
I mean, they have a lot
285K.
more on mobile. They have a crap ton of SKUs on mobile,
But
but
it
focusing
sounds to
on
me like
desktop,
he's
yeah,
focusing on desktop
yeah,
too.
yeah.
So does that mean that we're just going to get 6 or 7 or 8 of these different things that all suck, or is there going to be like 1 or 2 of these that don't? Because I'll say this, I mean, at 499, who on earth is? I mean, at 499, who's buying a 285K?
Uh, Somebody who wants to experience a 285K and pay
I
full price
mean,
for it.
285. I mean, because it's my understanding that the 9800X, yeah, the 9800X 3D is 459.
Yep.
That's in store. Okay.
Mhm.
It's my understanding that you can find this, and that's at Microsoft physical store. Um, if I remember correctly, you can find this for like $400 right now.
Yeah.
How much is it on Amazon? Yeah, see, 469. See, I think you can still find this cheaper.
I mean, I
Um,
just bought mom a new CPU for $160, so I'm I'm not going to be spending that kind of money on an Intel.
yeah, I mean, it's, I mean, yeah, okay, way to go, 285K. Um, for $20 more, you get X3D and 9800 X3D. So
Mhm.
it's like, yeah. And I'll say this, it's my understanding that the next gen is just going to really, really have some speed from AMD.
Yeah, and
So
and I have a distinct feeling that with Nova Lake, Intel's like, "Okay, we gotta pull out all the stops. We need to do a Zen 1, our own version of Zen 1 now," and I have a feeling that's what they're trying to target with Nova Lake. Whether or not they're successful will remain to be seen until we have silicon
that's
in
the
sockets.
that's going to be the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem because even let's just go off and say the CFO, who is apparently knows everything, says and comes out, and let's say that Arrow Lake S is highly competitive. Okay, all AMD has to do is release the 10,800 or whatever they're going to call the next gen
Mhm.
X3D, and just be like, oh well, yeah. I mean, we could have done 6, but we really wanted to spank Intel, so it's gonna do a boost clock of 7.5 and the base clock at 6.8.
Hey, you know what, man? The performance wars are on, and I'm here for it.
I
Because
am. I too.
I mean, to kind of continue with the quote, the interesting thing is in the second paragraph of his quote, he says it does address the high end desktop market, and so we would expect that we will improve our position next year. So all in all, I actually feel pretty good about the client.
You know, uh, okay. Let's go back the other way. Okay, anyone who's on AM5
Mhm.
isn't going to just throw away their stuff
Right.
and switch back over to Intel. I
Nope.
think Intel is thinking, okay, well, people will flock back. I think people who build systems might take you a little bit seriously, but at the same time, I, I'm not buying one.
No.
Even if I had unlimited amounts of money, I'm not going to be the guinea pig. I'm going to sit this one, maybe another generation out here,
Yep.
and basically force Intel to prove to me that they actually take this seriously. I'm still not happy with how their absolute lack of response has been on from the 14th and 13th gen.
Yeah. I
And
agree.
people need to remember that. But
Yeah.
with that being said, I don't know. I mean, sure, let's see how it goes. And
Well, I think we kind of touched on this before when we were discussing AMD's movement in the graphics market and how they could potentially overtake Nvidia there. And it kind of boiled down to AMD needs to have 3 consecutive generations where they are not just highly competitive on performance, but also highly competitive on price. And Intel has had so many major cluster Fs over the past few months. Sorry, I'm not Gamers Nexus. I'm not going to use the full word. Um, Intel has done so abysmally terribly just in the last year alone that it's something's got to change. And we need to see a few years of consecutive good performance at reasonable price relative to AMD before we can really trust them again. I look, hey, if I hit the Powerball, I would be doing this podcast probably on a 285K just to experience it. Just to say, okay, yeah, I've had my hands on one and yeah, here are my honest thoughts. And I'd probably buy my own hardware and do that. If I had that, $1.3 billion Powerball deal. Um, but odds are I'm not, and so that's not going to happen. But what I would do is drop a 10800X3D or a 10850X3D in my system and blast at 7 plus gigahertz if that is the thing that comes out. And and enjoy that because yeah, that's a pretty big upgrade from what I've got cuz right now I'm hovering what 5.2, 5.4 at best on a single core boost. And having those extra 2 gigahertz available for just general performance is just gonna make everything that much quicker and smoother and faster. Um, I'm sure my 78 or 7900 XTX is gonna like that chip when it comes out. But, that's kind of the name of the game is you get in to the hardware where you want to get in at, and if upgrade options manifest, then rock and roll, and if they don't, then you start looking at a new system. So people who bought in on Zen 2, like me with my B450 that I gave to mom, uh, you know, I'm upgrading her CPU 2 whole generations. She's going from a 2700X to a 5700G, and then I'm yanking the Nvidia GPU out of it. And so it's an interesting situation for Intel to be in because they are simultaneously competing with AMD's current generation Zen parts, but also trying to win people who went to AMD with AM4. And because I genuinely don't see most people with AM5 jumping over to Intel unless they've just had an absolutely abysmal experience. If their board blows up or, they wind up with some major issue that really is only fixed by switching to Intel, which isn't an AMD problem anyway. Um, it those are the customers that I think Intel is trying to win back. And then they're going to have a better chance of acquiring other customers like you and me at
Well,
the end of
look,
life for the 5th gen when, or for
Intel
AM5.
Intel needs to just stop the bleeding from the AOs in the
Yep.
laptops, because
Yep.
the honest truth is that 395 AI 395 is a very compelling laptop offering
Yeah.
that laptop manufacturers, I think, have sat back and haven't been super aggressive um, on getting and making laptops with that.
Sure.
But I'll make it very clear, if they don't have a good offering this next time around, I can promise you'll start seeing them flood in the market, because we know that Alienware and Dell have kind of dropped their no AMD piece.
Yep.
We know that they're starting to do that because they just have to stay alive. Um, AMD is absolutely just owning the space of of gaming.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, and general PC usage too. I mean, it's not just gaming, but gaming drives, I think, a lot of those purchase decisions. But, for the average person, they're looking at AMD and seeing, well, okay, I get more performance for the same money or less with AMD. Okay, why go there? And they're just browsing Facebook. Um, I think about the only place where Intel actually wins in any respect is ridiculously long battery life, because the laptops that get the good battery life really are Intel and Intel only. They've got is the GPU on the die and the CPU, and that's some pretty low power stuff. Granted, not as low as the ARM CPUs in Macs because they're just ridiculously power efficient.
mhm,
But right now on the Windows and Linux side, Intel takes the cake for acceptable performance with low power usage.
yeah,
AMD's got the high end, but not the efficiency end, and I think that's kind of why they're making fun of Intel and the EconoBox cores. And then they also, so in that 56 cores that they're touting, or sorry, 52 cores that they're
hmm,
touting, we're looking at only 16 cores of actual performing cores. The rest are split between 32 EconoBox cores and 4 low power cores. And that is, I think, going to end up being an architectural issue unless Microsoft actually has developed some really good task scheduling to take advantage of the E cores and LP cores. And to be quite frank, in the work laptop that I have from my day job, I'm not seeing that benefit because I have a quad core. I have 4 P cores that are hyper threaded, and then I think it's 8 or 10 E cores. I can't remember what it's got. But it just the E cores most of the time just do nothing. They're not even used. And I'm running the latest version of Windows 11. So you would think that that has a task scheduler that's set up to handle these cores, because they've had E-cores for how long now? It's been what, that came out with 10th gen. So 6 years plus, and Windows still isn't task scheduling appropriately. Like,
well,
what the heck?
did you see that Intel filed a patent for software defined supercores?
I did, and that was the next thing I was going to mention, because that too is kind of interesting.
Because doesn't wouldn't that bypass the um, the scheduler that every operating system have of how many cores and how they assign So does that mean I
Yes and
get to
no.
choose my super core? I mean, it's the dumbest thing ever. Like,
Well, not necessarily. Okay, so one of the things I think that makes it a brilliant idea is it's a sort of an offshoot of the original idea that AMD, I think, hired the executive at Intel who had that idea. I could be wrong about where he's gone to, but he's no longer with Intel. And that idea was you have one big honking core that runs really super fast, and it can do single threaded tasks insanely quickly. But you get a whole bunch of threads, and you need four threads to run really quick. Core automatically subdivides itself logically into four separate cores, runs those threads simultaneously, rock and roll. Then you get another task that's eight threads, and the same thing happens. Splits it up eight ways, and you run through on on that thing as if it's an eight core part. And then once that's all done, they just close off that virtualization and bring the threads back together, and you got one big fat core again. And it would be that I think I can't remember exactly what the thing was called, but it's basically on-demand hyper-threading. And this is almost the reverse of that, where you have a whole bunch of smaller, more efficient cores, which Intel is, I will grant them this, they're very good at doing. But with that, the idea would be that you'd reverse that mentality where you take all of these little cores and make them act as a bigger core, and so you get more work done in a single cycle because you have two cores working on the same thing rather than one core working on one thing at a time. Because at the end of the day, each core can only work on one thing at a time.
mhm,
But uh they just do it so quickly that it looks to a normal person that they're doing things simultaneously.
yeah,
So, it's an interesting play from an efficiency standpoint, especially if you could take, let's say you have 32 efficiency cores or Econobox cores, and you take those 32 Econobox cores and squish them through whatever magic Intel has going into a single core. You could do some pretty cool processing stuff with that.
hmm
Or, if you got a thread over here that just needs one economy core and then another thread over here that just needs one economy core, then you have 30 cores that you can dedicate to one single thread and blast through that even faster. And, the whole idea is to get through the workload as quickly as you can so that you can get back to a shutdown state. And
I mean,
that's
I mean that's what's so interesting is how AMD and Intel have completely flipped.
mhm,
Intel for the longest time was power, speed, and just all out. It was just everything, and then they started moving to this efficiency thing, and
mhm,
now it's flipped the exact opposite way, where AMD has gone from efficiency and we're not the fastest to now yeah, we only have one core and it's super fast, and yeah, you'll want it.
yep,
And it's very interesting because if Zen 6, the question I have is where is Zen 6 going to be from a power perspective? Because we know that they're going to be on 2X from TSMC, which is going to be a highly technical um, uh, process node for them. We know that that's going to help them get to the higher cores, but then the other piece I have on it is like, is that where you're going to get it, or are they going to have to also do some of the they're going to have to add more power too, but they're not using a ton of power right now. I mean,
right.
that's the beauty for Ryzen is that you haven't really used more. So if you're to the point where you could realistically like add another, because I think if you could add another 50 or 100 um watts of power, now that's assuming that that's beneficial for them.
Yeah.
I'm sort of wondering if um, if that's helpful. Because the overclocking for 9800 and all of the current 9000 series CPUs, adding power doesn't make it super fast. So it'll be
No.
interesting to see what the next generation looks like.
Well, yeah, I think where AMD would want to add power is when they're adding more physical silicon. So, if you're going from a
Could
16 to a 32 core, for example.
could you see the real benefit? I mean, think about this. If you really got the IO die
Mhm.
dialed in and you increased the speed of the actual cores, oh, that's going to be just a mother trucker of a processor. Because
Mhm.
I love my 9800X 3D, but if you sat there and said, "Hey, we fixed the IO controller on this, and we're able to get CU DIMMs and much faster, you know, DDR5," which, to be honest, has been probably the biggest downfall of Ryzen, of all of the Zen processors.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
but man, if you could do that and get speed, oh, I
Mhm.
mean, to be honest, it's kind of like the best of both worlds. And from a gamer's perspective, it's like, sign me up. And I
Yeah.
think if that's what it is, I don't think Intel has a chance.
Yep.
I don't think they have a chance, because if that's really what they're doing, I don't think anything Intel does is gonna stave that off, because that's gonna be just a really, really fast process.
Then take
So
that and extrapolate it to Threadripper.
and on that Threadripper bombshell,
On that bombshell, we will call it a show for this evening. Thank you all for giving us a little bit of your time. And do remember to jump down below the video in the comments and leave a comment so YouTube doesn't think you're a bot. Remember to like and subscribe and do all that
or you're a
fun
moose.
algorithmic
Don't want
stuff.
to be a moose.
No, definitely don't want to be a moose. Let there only be one, even though I have two up there now. So, yeah. So until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Good night, everybody. Take care.
Good night.